Hello and welcome to yet another podcast Pontifications with me, Evo Terra. This is not a podcast. This is a video where I talk to you about podcasting. Today's topic is about the existential crisis that you will, or perhaps already have, face or have faced when you are doing your podcast and how to get through it. The topic is officially called Podcasting Your Way Through Your Existential Crisis. Also, you'll notice my setup's a little different. I'm not on my big microphone. I'm doing this just with a headset. So if the audio quality is not what you were used to, my apologies. My apologies for that. But let's get into the existential crisis that your podcast will, at some point in time, face. Existential crisis, as you already know, means when you question why you are doing this. Why does this show actually exist? Does anyone care? Is anyone listening? Is it the way you want it to work? That's the existential crisis. Now, I have to tell you, I have faced this existential crisis on every single podcast I have ever been involved with. And I've been involved with a lot of podcasts. The show that my wife and I are doing right now, currently in its 5th season, every year we go through this, or every season we have gone through this existential crisis issue. What is it that we're trying to do? And are we actually achieving that? As you know, I produce podcasts for a variety of clients, professional service providers, businesses, and the like. And all of them face this issue. Is this actively what we want to be doing? Why does this podcast exist? So I want to talk about some ways to kind of work your way through that. Some ideas of podcasting your way through your existential crisis. Because you can always quit, right? I mean, that is always the easiest option. Economists will tell you everything you've invested into it, they're all sunk costs, just quit. But we're not going to talk about quitting. We're going to talk about working your way through and podcasting your way through that existential crisis that you are facing. And I have some ideas how you could use the process of podcasting to kind of get you through the existential crisis. So the existential crisis, again, is why does this show exist, and does it match what your expectations are? So one of the easy things to fall into a trap is, well, let me go find out if it's what my listeners want. Let me do a survey. Let me send out some Facebook notices, some emails to my listeners, and ask them, what are they getting what they want? And I think that's a great idea. I'm going to express a little bit of caution on that idea, because the people who are continuing to listen to your show every week, they may not realize you're having an existential crisis. And more importantly, they really love what you're doing. That's why they're listening all the time. So they may not be the best people to get good, solid answers from your existing listener audience. You might get some. I wouldn't say don't do it, but I wouldn't expect to get a lot of value out of going to your most dedicated audience. Your fans will love you no matter what you do. What you need to do is get outside of that bubble. And that's hard to do, but the easiest way to do that is go listen to more stuff. Way too many podcasters who have this existential crisis don't listen to a lot of podcasts. Or if they do, they listen to a very few or a very, very narrow band of other podcasts. So their expectation of what a podcast is limited. So expand your subscription base. Go out and find things that are completely different than what you were doing, but that sound good, that sound great, that are compelling content that you are interested in. And take inspiration from that. How can you adopt what you are listening to and enjoying on someone else's show into yours? Because it's very okay to completely and totally change the format. It's also very okay to make small tweaks to the format. You don't have to emulate someone else, but you certainly should get some experiences outside of the show that you are currently making each and every week, which for a lot of people I know means they maybe aren't listening to very many podcasts at all. So yeah, go find some more. Go find some time. Go do some interesting things. The second thing I think that you can do when you're having the existential crisis is talk about it. And I don't just mean on your podcast, by the way. If anything, be very careful about complaining too much about your existential crisis on your podcast, because you may be giving someone an excuse to unsubscribe. Now, I say that out of one side of my mouth, and the other side I say don't be afraid of talking about your existential crisis. Don't drone on and on about your existential crisis on your show. Mention it, get it out there and done. What I mean by talk about it is talk about it in your network. Talk about it within your social sphere that you likely have created for your show. Maybe you haven't. And if you haven't, that's fine. Then talk about it on the social sphere that you have personally. Talk about it on your Facebook account. Talk about it on your Twitter account. If you're a LinkedIn user, talk about it. Write stories on Medium that talk about the existential crisis that you are suffering. Write a story and post it, or a publication, I believe is the appropriate terminology, on LinkedIn. And talk about the challenges that you're facing, the existential crisis you're having with this show, why it exists, what it does. Because what you will get when you talk about it outside of your podcasting realm, but still within the realm, the niche that you occupy, is you will hear from the people who don't listen to your show. Sure, maybe they'll become a subscriber and listen, but that's great. We certainly want that to happen. But that's not the reason you talk about it. The reason you talk about it is to get the opinions of people who aren't currently listening, and you get the understanding of what might entice them to listen, what sorts of topics they want to hear discussed, or types of content they want to be surfaced that they would be interested in. Yes, you're going to get lots of power through, keep going, and all that, and I encourage you to do all those things, but I also encourage you to try and dig deeper. When someone has an observation that you think doesn't actually fit, when they say, well, the shows I listen to do X, and that's nowhere near your format, your style, think about it. Think about how you could make it that way. And every single one of them is a valid idea. Not that you should implement all of these ideas, but worthy of your consideration. Share with the larger sphere of influence. Again, on your podcast, yes, once, one episode, that's it. One episode about your existential crisis, that's it. That's what I'm going to give you. But then beyond that, the other sorts of places that you talk about things, share. This is still a very human medium. Most of the people that are creating podcasts, the vast majority, 90x%, are individuals, just like you, with their own thoughts, their own fears, their own ideas, their own existential crises. And they're happy when someone is also going through these same sorts of problems. Again, not every week. Nobody wants to be a Debbie Downer. Nobody wants you to be a Debbie Downer. Negative Nancy, not to pick on people named Debbie. So when you talk about it, again, it's one on your show and then throughout your social network, when you share what's really happening, that's really powerful. You know, you could use your Instagram page, for example, to do this. I've been trying to think about ways I could utilize my Instagram better for my podcast, and one of the ways is to talk about what's really happening. Share your real life with people. Those fears, that FUD, that fear, uncertainty, and doubt that you are feeling, share it with your wider network. It's okay even to send an email out to your subscribers if you're a business and you're thinking about this, not from a personal point of view, from a business point of view. Send an email out saying, hey, we're questioning why we're doing this. We're wondering why we're doing this. We're committed to do it, but are we doing the right sorts of things? You'd be interested, and you'll be amazed at what stories you get back from people. A couple of quick ideas of ways you can podcast your way through your inevitable existential crisis, which your show will face before too terribly long. Hey, listen, if you need help working your way through things, you can reach out to me. I launch podcasts for firms, help them make measurable business goals with their podcasts. Reach me at evo@podcastlaunch.pro, podcastlaunch.pro for all the details of how people work with me. I'll do this again tomorrow. Yes, I'll be back again tomorrow with another podcast pontifications. Cheers.